Happy New Year! Hello and welcome to the first Seconds Out live of 2025. I didn't mean to be a poet. It just comes naturally. And I'm joined by, no, it's not Ayman Khan as advertised in our video description. I can only apologise. Ayman Khan is currently breaking all sorts of speed limits on his way back from Hertfordshire, having done a sit-down interview with Frank Warren, no less. Getting back to his home in Birmingham as we speak. So he will be joining us in due course. Due course maybe around 40 minutes though. But instead I've got young Mr. Hart, who we know brings a completely different demographic, a different type of fan to these events. Josh, how you doing, mate?
I'm very, very good, Danny. Very happy to be here to feature on the first Seconds Out Live of 2025. Excited to get into everything today. There's a lot to talk about. And yeah, just buzzing to be here.
Get into everything indeed. We will be talking not only about the thumbnail image you can see, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua perhaps finally getting it on, having lost their previous fights. 2025 could be their year, but also some other fights that may or may not happen over the course of the next 12 months. Eubank Jr, Conor Benn, Terence Crawford and Canelo, after some recent comments from Timothy Bradley that caused some excitement and consternation in equal amounts. And we'll also be talking about the first slate of shows in January and February this year. Josh is obviously covering some of those, as is Ayman. I will be covering none, although I am going to the Nottingham show as a fan. But we'll be talking about all of those as well. But we are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. That hasn't changed from 2024. If a New Year's resolution, it is to be even more interactive. So please do get your likes, your comments, your subscriptions all in, and we'll get through as many of the comments as we can. But let's go to the chat, see what people are saying so far. See, we've got 40 people watching, which is, respectable amount. But we'd like to push that up a bit higher. So, maybe tell your friends if you've got friends. We hope not everyone who watches this is an incel tucked in their mother's basement. Please do tell your friends to tune in to Seconds Out Live. Ayman is here in about 40 minutes, as I say, so it will get better. Right, let's have a look. I can't read any of these comments by someone purporting to be P. Diddy until they change their handle. J.E. Prodigal Son says, only guy on that list to fight anything close to an entire lineup is AJ. Andy Ruiz is an interesting matchup for Fury, says Antarctica 4321. Joe says Fury can box. Obviously, other people in chat have maybe asserted that he can't. Ahmet Ozkan says AJ will win by KO in rounds 5 to 7. Sam59 says, I'd rather see Fury versus Usyk 3, to be honest, and AJ take on the Bacoli, Billy Nelson like that. Bacoli, Zhang, Wilder, or even Moses. Not biblical fame Moses, of course, but Moses Italma. At least that's what I hope Sam's referring to here. Ahmet Ozkan also says, when does Turkey Sheikh plan to make this match? Well, Mr. Alal Sheikh will be in London, I believe, on Saturday for the Ring Magazine Awards. So we'll be sure, I won't be there, as you could predict. We will ask him what his plans are regarding Joshua and Fury there. Beautiful Golden Dragon, nice to see you again. Happy New Year to Grey Dad Guy and Rudolph. Yeah, I mean, Rudolph's obviously been incredibly busy over the festive period, as you would expect. But now he's got 364 days off. Not really, Josh. Don't get too excited there. James Francis says, nobody wants to see them fight no more. They're both losers. Well, we'll see if it is indeed nobody, James Francis, because we will be putting the poll out in a minute. Hakan Johansson, Hakan's Ringside Live. Good afternoon, Danny and Josh. Come on, mate. You get involved. You can call me Great Dad Guy. You can call him Rudolph. We've been called a lot worse, I'm sure. James Francis says Terence Crawford will end Canelo's career. That's a bold shout. Thunder Road. Good to see you, Thunder Road. New Year, and Josh got rid of the bunk bed ladder, usually in camera view. I don't know if he got rid of the bunk bed ladder or he just changed the camera angle.
I've done nothing on this end. This is...
Yeah. Hit the thumbs up,
thanks to Vinny, not me.
Oh, good old Vinny. Hit the thumbs up, chat, says Thunder Road. Thank you, mate. We do want some more thumbs up, as we want some more people watching as well. Nat says, Happy New Year, Flexen. Brackets, Grey Dad Guy. And Josh, I wasn't born Hart. Oh, yeah, I forgot that was his nickname. We definitely need to carry that over from 2024. This is because Josh is so ridiculously young, apparently, that he doesn't know anything from the last 30 years of boxing. So you say anything to him, he says, I don't even think I was born when that happened. So we'll see if we get any of those today. Don't force it, Josh. Just let it happen organically.
Yeah, we'll just let it happen.
Scandolous, very good, says, too late with a crying emoji. DB Cooper 1, where would we be without you? probably on 39 viewers instead of 40. Don't know whether to wish you chaps a happy new year, seeing as you do Christmas parties in January. That was a one-off. We haven't had any Christmas party this year or last year. I imagine you do Chinese New Year in February instead. Ask Big John Fisher, he'll tell you when we do Chinese anything. Chinese Alan, for Gavin and Stacey fans out there. And I'm sure there's loads, given the Christmas episode. James Francis says, Moses Helmet is the only youngster that will beat Usyk 12 out of 12 rounds. Wow, the bold shouts are coming thick and fast. Crawford is going to end Canelo's career. Moses Talma will 120, 108. Usyk. What is going on? DB Cooper 1 asks, what's young? Y-U-N-G. What's young Josh been sniffing? Looking like Rudolph with that nose. You're a bit late on that one, DB Cooper 1. But whatever young Josh has been sniffing, it's, things that are legal, we should point out while we're on the live show.
I've been sniffing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Sniffing the rarefied air of boxing in 2025, thanks to Turkey Al Sheikh. Right, so let's get the poll out before we start talking about it. So Anthony Joshua coming off a one-sided drubbing, I think it's fair to say, even if it's unfair to say, against Daniel Dubois. He said, I think it was to an outlet while he was in Nigeria, catching up with his family, having some time over there, that he's focusing on Tyson Fury in 2025. We haven't heard much from Fury since the defeat to Usyk, of course. Excuses aside, I know some people will say. But it looks like those two are on a collision course for 2025. So what we're asking you in the poll this week is, let me get the wording right. Do you want to see Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury next? Yes, inject it into my veins. No, give it the lethal injection. Which do you prefer out of those two options? Let us know. But yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of outlined a scenario now, but let's go through the kind of main arguments for and against. I think it will be a competitive fight. I think we've got a better idea now than we did 5 years ago of what their strengths and limitations are. So I think in that sense, it'll be competitive. I think they'll both be a bit more maybe wary of each other's skill sets, which might not necessarily lead to an action-packed fight. But I think they've been rivals for so long. They've been the top two British heavyweights for, so long, similar generation. We really should see them fight just to find out who's number one, similar to Kell Brook and Ayman Khan, even though that was many years past both of their primes. The flip side, though, is that it's quite clear now that neither of them are the best heavyweight in the world. Alexander Usyk has beaten both of them twice each. We also know, at least in Joshua's case, not the best heavyweight in Britain anymore either. That mantle or that moniker goes to IBF heavyweight champion Daniel Dubois, who, of course, dominated Joshua before knocking him clean out. Fury could still make the case that he's better than both Dubois, having never fought him, and Joshua, having got probably slightly better performances against Usyk than Joshua did, although, that's open to debate. So do people really want to see it? I mean, everyone seems to say, well, of course, it's AJ and Fury. It's going to be a massive, I sound like Eddie Hearn. I don't know, I slipped into it. It's going to be a massive commercial attraction. I will buy you success. But yeah, but the flip side of that is, skill-wise, the shine's been taken off, or the sheen's been taken off a little bit because of their most recent results and the last time we saw each of them in the ring. So yeah, that's what we're asking you in the poll. Please do vote. But Josh, what's your view on it? Is it a fight that gets the juices flowing?
I'd say so. I'd say yeah. I'd say it's still a fight that gets the juices flowing. I think we're very lucky that we're in a position where the juices still flow for the fight, because let's say Fury did beat Usyk in the rematch, we'd be sat here right now. We wouldn't be talking about this. I think all the conversation would have been over before it even began. But because they both coming off losses, neither of them hold world titles, neither of them are really obliged to anything contractually right now. This is probably the most open field we've had to make Fury versus AJ ever. And we're in the perfect position with all the influence from Saudi Arabia and Turkey Al Sheikh and what they're bringing to the table as well. A big problem beforehand was the money. And the money's there now. The interest has always been there. So I'd say we're probably in the best time to make the fight since when they first held world titles and it was spoke about. Don't get me wrong, this fight would be so much better 5 years ago when they were a lot younger and there were world titles on the line. I think we've got to remember at one point this fight was being spoken about for undisputed. And it does show the path that we've gone down to where we're now talking about this fight in just a big fight perspective, but no world title. However, if they both have aspirations to continue, I would say this is the perfect fight, because the winner then goes on to back to the world titles, and for the loser, you do really see yourself in a bit of a bad spot, a bit of a tricky situation at that point. So I'd say this is a fight that needs to be made now. I think let's not. I know a lot of people have said that they've lost interest, and that Gareth A. Davies said in an interview with me that he wants to see them built back up, and a lot of people on social media did disagree, and I have to be on the side of the people who disagree. I don't think we have enough time on our hands now to build them back up. I think now is the time to make it. Don't send them anywhere else. I know people have said maybe give Joshua Dillian White next, but let's not bother doing that. We're in a position where they're not contractually obliged to anything. They've got no such thing as a mandatory right now, so they don't hold world titles. So just get it on. Put it at Wembley Stadium, and it will sell out. Let's be honest, it's going to sell out Wembley Stadium. Of course it will. So make the fight, get it done, and let us finally settle the debate about who's better between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I think the problem with building them back up, even if it was deemed necessary, which from a commercial perspective, I don't think it is, but even if it was, it's too much of a risk at this stage of their careers that they'll get knocked off on the way and the fight will never happen. Or it will be further tarnished if they insist on going ahead with it after one of them suffers another defeat. You know, Fury, you can say, at least at the moment, he's never been stopped. You know, he's only been beaten by one man who happens to be probably the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, not just the best heavyweight in the world right now in Usyk. So you can kind of get away with it. Whereas with Joshua, he's already lost to Ruiz. I know he avenged it. He's lost to Dubois and he's lost to Usyk twice. So there's a risk, depending on who you put him in with. And I know Dillian White didn't look great in his most recent performance out in Gibraltar against Tete. But even against Dillian White, who knows AJ well and will be highly motivated for that clash, there is an element of risk involved that AJ won't make it to the Fury fight. And equally with Fury, depending on who you match him against in the interim, you know, if he's going to go back in time a little bit and fight the likes of, I don't know, Sefa Safari or Tom Schwartz or someone like that, yeah, fair enough. I'd still be confident. But if you put him in one of the live contenders, a Bacoli, a Caballel, you know, guys that you would make Fury a heavy favourite a year or two ago, now it's more of a 50-50 proposition. And the amount of money that is on the line for this, the way we can find out who was the best British heavyweight of their generation, which I think is the way to term it now, that's a lot to put on risk just so they can have a warm-up fight. And what's the purpose of the warm-up fight? To give them their confidence back? That bit I could understand. But not to build it as a commercial entity, because it's huge. It won't get any bigger if Fury goes and knocks out a B-list heavyweight and if AJ does the same. So I think, yeah, so if it is going to happen, and I've got to be honest, I haven't got a major appetite for it, but if it is going to happen, the sooner the better, in my view. Let's just go back to the chat. MB says, yes, it will be a great event. Just what British boxing needs, must be at Wembley. Yeah, I mean, if we've got to have it, let's make it in England. Let's not have it in Saudi. I mean, Saudi do great events and everything, but the whole reason we're having this is because it's a big, huge British domestic clash, because it's not to dispute the best heavyweight in the world anymore. Let's have it in the UK. James Francis, Fury is heartbroken after thinking he was untouchable until he lost to the middleweight ugly rabbit, beat the shit out of him. Soon humbled him, and now he don't want to talk. God, that's a fight I want to see. James Francis against Typo, correct. Ethan says, juices are flowing. So that was a reference to Josh's comment earlier. DB Cooper 1 says, I only want to see Fury versus AJ if it's done in the background like a Riyadh season deal. Can't be asked going back to the old dark days of constant back and forth negotiations, disappointment. Get it done pronto. David McKinnon says, Tyson Chewbacca Fury versus AJ is battle of the bums. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he put his shorts up so high. He was trying to cover up his hirsute nature. Magic71 says, we've heard from the Joshua team, but nothing from the Fury side. Anything from Warren? Well, it's funny you should mention that, Magic71, but Ayman Khan, who should be joining us in about half an hour, spoke to Frank Warren this morning. I don't know specifically what he said about the Fury-Joshua situation, but I know the questions were asked. And Ayman, I imagine the interview will be going live tomorrow, unless Ayman can somehow edit it quick enough to go up tonight. Don't want to put any more pressure on him. He's already breaking the speed limit to get here. But those questions were asked. We knew Fury and Joshua weren't the best before December 21st. Usyk had already beaten them both and Dubois. Yeah, but the first Fury-Usyk fight was relatively close, and there was still a possibility that Fury could turn it around. A lot of people were predicting Fury to win the rematch. It may look a bit silly in retrospect or in hindsight, but that was the case then. Now we do know for sure. Nat says, I'd watch it, but make Flexen pay for the PPV. Well, if you're here, then yeah. I mean, I'm not paying for the PPV at yours. So let's put that one on ice. I don't have any desire to see either of them fight anyone else at this point. Yeah, I see that. I mean, I'm not sure I have much of a desire to see them fight each other either, though. It's like a nostalgia thing, isn't it? Oh, I always wanted to see AJ against Fury, and I'd love to see who comes out on top. Yeah, I do. And maybe if they both retired now and then came back in a few years, that'd reignite the kind of desire in me to see it. But right now, because I've got that fresh memory of their recent performances, and they've both been, not exposed, but shown to be clearly not the best in the heavyweight division, it takes some of it away for me. DB Coupon says, will SO be picking up Ayman Khan speeding tickets as expenses? Yes, we will. For a sit-down interview with Frank Warren, the first of Ayman Khan's flourishing career, of course we will. I can say that as someone who doesn't actually spend money out of my own pocket. I've just seen an emo kid going past on the M6 doing 95 miles per hour with a wacky hairdo. Is that somehow more difficult to do 95 with a wacky hairdo than if you had a short back and sides? Do let us know. Or maybe Ayman will let us know when he arrives. Magic71 says, why would the winner go back to world titles? They should get in the effing queue. Joshua/Fury fanboy BS. I think that's a bit unfair. Obviously, that was Josh's comment, not mine. But I still think it's unfair because when you're a huge commercial attraction like an Anthony Joshua specifically, and to a slightly lesser extent Tyson Fury, you never need to get back in the queue, really. Like, if Joshua expressed an interest in having his rematch with Daniel Dubois for the world title or a third crack at Usyk, if that's the biggest money fight out there, they'll find a way to make it happen. So, yes, they should get back in the queue, but they'll never have to. Zumbanu Love, good to see you, sir. How did Wardley get the #1 WBA spot? Bacoli was ranked higher than him last month, and both haven't fought since. Yeah, but Bacoli is going for that IBF final eliminator, isn't he? So he'll no longer be ranked now by the WBA once that's official. So I guess that's why he's kind of been moved out of the way. Wardley, I'm not sure what he's done to get ranked quite so highly. I mean, he's a good guy, conclusive, devastating finish against Fraser Clark in their rematch, and he's a nice fella. Nothing but the best wishes for him. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. We'd have to get someone from the WBA on to explain that one. James Francis says Frank Warren has got the best fighters. I'm sure he would agree. He probably said the same to Ayman earlier. DB Coupon, not going to lie, I still want to see AJ versus Jarrell Miller just for old time's sake. Reset the moment it all went wrong. Yeah, I mean, Sam Jones was kind of hyping that fight last year, saying, they had that pull apart at the original press conference. It never happened because of Miller's, checkered history, shall we say. But they are both back now. They've both lost to Dubois. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't say I'm more excited about seeing Fury Joshua than Joshua against Miller, to be honest. Ash Barr says, after AJ got battered so badly, the desire has gone. Zumbanu Love again. If AJ becomes 3-time champ, would he be the first to become one? Would be the first to become one without being ranked #1 for any of his reigns? It depends what you mean by ranked #1. Who by? The Ring magazine, the consensus of boxing experts? Some people might have thought AJ was #1. James Francis, Daniel Dubois will beat Joseph Parker by knockout. Disagree with that. Daniel is Moses Italma's toughest sparring. That's how I know Dubois will do it. Okay. MB says, any truth in Italma versus Joe Joyce on a March Saudi card? I spoke to Frank Warren. Last time I spoke to him, I suggested, well, not suggested, because that makes it sound like I want Joe Joyce to get the shit beaten out of him, and I didn't. But yeah, I said, would you make Italma against Joe Joyce? What's the future for Joe Joyce, and would you put him with Moses Italma? Because if you're in Frank Warren's position, it seems like a very obvious fight to make. You've got a guy on your roster who you need to give a fight to. He's contracted, but his best days look behind him. He's still got, a high, good reputation from the past. If Italma beats him, it's a great name to have on his record. Italma's it's a passing of the torch style fight, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any truth in the rumor, but if I was Frank Warren, I would be trying to make that fight. Ahmet Ozcan says, Todd the Birth says the UK will stop for an hour to watch Fury versus AJ fight. You agree? I mean, you'd have to stop for at least, 48 minutes if it went the distance. Yeah, I mean, not the whole of the UK, no. Because boxing isn't the kind of sport that everyone's talking about around the water cooler as it was in the 80s, although did we have water coolers in the 80s? Going off on a tangent there. But when the likes of Frank Bruno was fighting Mike Tyson, or Barry McGuigan was winning his world title at Loftus Road, You know, back then, boxing was on terrestrial TV. They mentioned it on Grandstand. It was on BBC Sports Night. I'm showing my age here. Well aware. Grey hair probably did that already. And it was all that was on everyone's mind. Boxers were getting, now and again, at least, getting winning or getting high up in the Sports Personality of the Year voting, getting back page on the newspapers. So it was a much more mainstream sport then. And we could spend a whole episode talking about why it's gone more and more into the niche realm, but that's where it is right now. So I don't think the whole country will stop in the same. I don't know if it'd even. It's hard to say how much buzz it would get now, but if you look at it compared to, say, I don't know, a massive Premier League football game like Liverpool against Man City or Liverpool Man United back in the day when United were a better team. No offense, they gave us a pretty tough game at the weekend. Yeah, there's a big difference now. So, no, Britain will not stop. British boxing, if you're already a boxing fan or you're a casual and you dip in at the big fights and so on, then yes, I think so. James Francis, Joe Joyce is too slow to fight Moses Talma. That's one of the reasons why they'll probably make the fight. Nat says to Zambanu Love, I had the same thought. Wardley can only be ranked as the #1 boxer in East Anglia for me. We discussed this the other day, and we decided that Fabio Wardley, pound for pound, had just about edged out Jordan Gill as the #1 East Anglian boxer. If anyone out there from East Anglia has an interest in East Anglian boxing, please do let us know in the comments. DB Cooper 1, the Joe Joyce fall-off needs to be studied. Beat Dubois and Parker, now back at British level. Joyce living up to BA liberal art students being failures, shaking my head. I think the problem is, and just to be serious for a moment, I think if we studied the Joe Joyce fall-off in any great depth, I'm kind of worried what we'd find, and I'm not sure if everyone would want to see him fight again. You know, I've been concerned about Joe for some time now. Some of the things he's shown both in the ring and out suggest all is not quite right, you know, cerebrally, if that's the right word. But I'm assuming, as he's still got his license, he's passed all the relevant scans and so on. So good luck to him. But yeah, I mean, there is a concern there, and I'd be very concerned if they make the Atalma fight. James Francis says the best fight to see ever is Shakur Stevenson versus Tank. Shakur will win all day, every day. I don't think we're really getting into that fight on this week's episode, but yeah, a mouth-watering fight. Big Chungus, nice to see you, Big Chungus. If you hang on with us, Big Chungus, Ayman will be here soon, so please stay. Don't leave because you haven't seen him on your screen yet. I know you're a huge fan. Is it confirmed AJ versus Fury? Not yet. Not yet. We do expect it to happen this year. MP says John O'Thaxton left the chat. MP, we're not saying #1 fighter in East Anglia all time. Otherwise, obviously, Thaxton would be right up there. So would Sam Sexton, Danny McIntyre. I could go on and on. But we're saying current best fighter in East Anglia. Antarctica 4321 says Andy Ruiz, he hasn't lost since his fight with AJ. Yeah, I mean, but he had that draw, didn't he, with Miller? A lot of people felt Miller did enough to win that as well. So he's not exactly putting forth a case where you can't deny him. He's not going knocking everyone out. So we'll have to see. Josh, if we come back to AJ against Fury, people talking about, you know, it needs to happen now, if at all. Who do you think's got more chance of getting back to that top level, regardless of what happens in a fight between the two of them? Do you see either of them having potential to get right back up there?
I think while Usyk's around, no. I don't think any of them will get back to the top level. I think Usyk will be the one to just simply keep on dominating and hold those world titles. But whoever's going to get closer to the top, I think it all comes down more to who's got more fire in the belly for it, who's got the desire. And right now, it seems that AJ has more desire, but it's not even been a month since Fury versus Usyk 2. We've not heard anything from Fury since after the fight, apart from the post-fight press conference. So I think to answer that one truthfully, I would need to give it a bit more time and wait for Fury to come out and see what he's doing next. Because if Fury hasn't got the desire to fight and looks at the AJ fight as just a one final big payday, then you'd have to say there's more of a chance of AJ going back to the top. But if they both have the hunger to go back to the top, then it is anyone's game. And I think I'd probably lean towards Fury just because I think there is still something so special about Fury in his style, and it's a much harder style to find sparring partners to replicate, and it's such a harder style to prepare for. Whereas I think AJ is a bit of an easier style to prepare for. I'm not saying by any means it's an easy night fighting AJ, So I'm pretty sure if you put me in there with AJ, I'd be flattened in the first 10 seconds, and that wouldn't be a pretty sight for my mum or my dad. So that wouldn't be happening anytime soon.
Or your number one fan.
Yeah, or the number one fan. But no, back to the point. Yeah, I do think if we were to both see him at a level playing field, I'd definitely probably say Tyson Fury has a bit more potential to go to the top, but only just. Again, it's a close one. I can't really decide who I think would win the fight anyway, let alone get back all the way to the top of the division.
Yeah, see, now I've always preferred Fury to Joshua. His style, I prefer his style more. I like the journey more that he's been on. And obviously, I know him better as well, I think, especially over the early years. So there's probably a bit of bias creeping in there as well. But in terms of getting back to that top level, I mean, I'm not sure either of them will. But I think Joshua maybe does have more of a chance. I think Fury's got more miles on the clock. I think he's been in a few wars in the ring, and he obviously had that long period outside the ring where he wasn't living the life, which hasn't helped. Joshua, you know, if nothing else, has always been a consummate professional in the gym. So I think that makes a difference. He's not had the weight fluctuations that Fury's had either. So I think he's got fewer miles on the clock. But I also think it's a style thing. So when Joshua's lost, he got, outboxed against Usyk. He got knocked out against Dubois and Ruiz. But if you don't manage to get rid of Joshua early on, he'll give you a hard fight. So Usyk's, best boxer in the world, maybe pound for pound, certainly at heavyweight. So it was always going to be a tough task. But against anyone else in that heavyweight division, if you can't knock Joshua clean out, and he'll be looking at that tape against Daniel Dubois, thinking there's things he could have done differently. Like Andy Ruiz rematch, he turned it round. If you can't knock him clean out, he will be a danger for as long as he's standing, because he's athletic, he's still got the speed, and he's still powerful. And the stamina's there as well. So, but with Fury, he's never relied on being a big puncher. It's always been about speed of hand, speed of foot, awkwardness, and size. Right now, the size isn't going away. He's not going to suddenly start shrinking, or if he does, it won't be to any great degree. But as you get older, especially when you've got more miles on the clock and you've been through hard fights, the speed of hand and speed of foot, which are so disproportionate for someone as big as Fury in the first place, those are the things that will start to fade. And if those are the things you can negate in Fury, as Usyk did, and as he fades, maybe more fighters will work out a way to do it, then what have you got? Because Fury's not going to suddenly turn into a knockout artist at the age he is now. He's not going to suddenly turn into a pressure fighter who's throwing, 100 shots around. So he's got to rely on his speed and his awkwardness and his size. And, two of those things will inevitably fade with age. And he, as I've said, has got more miles on the clock, in my view, than Joshua. So I think Joshua maybe has more of a chance. It wouldn't shock me, for example, if Joshua ultimately had a rematch with Dubois and won. I wouldn't expect it to happen in the next fight or even in the next couple. But he gets a couple of confidence-building wins under his belt, works out the right strategy for Dubois, because they clearly got that wrong in the last fight. It wouldn't shock me if he was able to get revenge in time. People just assume because Dubois is so young and he's on a great run of form that he's just going to keep getting better and better and better. It doesn't always work like that. Some fighters peak early. Some fighters have fluctuations. They run into the wrong opponent. Things happen in their personal life that changes how they are in the ring. Anything could happen. Dubois is still a young guy. He's riding high at the moment. Who knows how long that will last. But it's not inconceivable that Joshua gets back to that sort of level, whereas it's hard for me to see Fury getting back to the level he showed against Deontay Wilder in those 3 fights, for example. But who knows? Hopefully he can prove me wrong, because I have a lot of affection for the Gypsy King. Where are we? Yours truly says Andy Ruiz is retired. DB Coop 1 says, best fighter to come out of East Anglia is this bloke called John Deere. Absolute machine. He runs the place. Ash Barr says none of them beat Dubois at the moment. When you say none of them, do you mean Fury and AJ? Because I'd probably agree at the moment, although I think I would back Usyk to beat Dubois in a rematch. James Francis says Fury has lost his fire now. He's been beaten by a little man. Bet you Fury can't believe it. I mean, if he's watching this, I'm sure he can't. I mean, it wasn't he appealing the result. So, C. Barry with an exclamation mark says, except Usyk, who has beaten him already. Yeah, we just said that. Stuart says, Battle of the Wooden Spoon. I'd rather see Fury versus Dubois. C. Barry again says, yeah, Fury versus Dubois would be all right. And Tartka 4321 says, I think Wilder and Fury did each other a disservice. They shot each other. Well, I didn't notice that in any of the 3 fights. No, but seriously, yeah. I mean, I think they both took a lot out of each other. I think that's a very, very salient point. James Francis says Joshua is brain damaged now. I mean, I don't think there's any proof of that. He might as well retire before he ends up like a gabbage. I think you're going for cabbage there, James, which isn't a very nice term for someone who's got brain injuries. But yeah, I don't think there's any evidence of that in Joshua anyway. Stuart says Fury versus Dubois, AJ versus Italma. Freeze out Usyk, he's too good. Cool. I mean, AJ versus Italma is a great kind of passing the torch fight. But given Joshua's not with Frank Warren, can't see that happening. And also, it's the last thing AJ needs, isn't it, at this stage of his career? He's trying to get that one final shot to become a 3-time world heavyweight champion and make as much money as possible. And you've got Italma, who's not a big draw yet, and a huge threat and much, much younger and fresher. Like, AJ should be avoiding him like the plague. Fury versus Dubois is a good fight, though. Zambanu Love says, if you don't have decent feet, I think you'll struggle with Fury. AJ is as stiff, if not stiffer than Vlad, but is less cautious. Yeah, but are Fury's feet still as good as they were? Certainly didn't look it against Ngannou. And, you know, while they were better in the 2 fights with Usyk, still probably not quite what they were in their prime. C. Barry says, I don't see what Joshua gets out of this anymore. Maybe he just loves it. Maybe he loves to fight. Maybe boxing is, maybe his identity is completely wrapped up in boxing.
Right, we appear to have lost Danny for now. I guess this is where I just keep going on in the chat, so let me just load that up. Where were we? Whereabouts were we? Dubois is on a mission. I think he got robbed against Usyk. That was a body shot. Point. Oh, we've got Danny back. Danny, I've had to fill in for you.
I didn't even know I was gone.
Yeah, you just disappeared, mate. You just completely disappeared.
Oh, right, where were we?
I've just read the one about Dubois is on a mission, and he got robbed against Usyk.
Okay. Thanks for texting me, Mod Father Vinny, to tell me that I wasn't there. Where are we? Oh, yeah, that was a body shot. All right, so then Stuart says, he'll probably get another hiding. Shame I always had AJ as number 1. Magic71 says, I don't believe Fury or Joshua can get back to the top. Both have been severely mentally hit and exposed in many areas. Joshua 100% is done, in my opinion. The top 10 of Defo got his number. C. Barry says Joshua can get more property, another house, one for his mum, maybe a new first of days. What gets Joshua or need in the morning? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that means there, Barry. DB Cooper 1 says, AJ gives a lot of his money away now, though, through foundations, pre-Riyadh season and post-second Usyk loss. He said that's what motivates him now. Does a lot in Watford. Ash Bar, totally inconceivable AJ could ever get back to the top unless the belts get split and Eddie Hearn sets up another Charles Martin type fight. Zambanu Love says, AJ has made enough money chasing legacy, at least finished career as a fan favourite, finally taking fights we want to see. Stuart says, without Fury's tainted win against Klitschko, Fury's won the same as Bruno, Hyde and Akinwande. Well, no, he hasn't, because none of them beat anyone even with the quality of Deontay Wilder, in fairness, at the stage when they fought them. And why was his win over Klitschko tainted? Please do let me know. You talking about the drug thing when he got done for drugs in the build-up to the rematch? That's not for the first fight, is it? Brian Petrov says, did everyone, including you guys, overrate AJ? Thought he was just always a big, strong guy with limited skills. No, I think we were hypercritical of AJ here in the UK generally. But I think the flip side of that is, limited as he was or may have been, he was still managing to beat all the other main guys out there at the time. You know, for a lot of people, he was consensus number 1 at the same time when Wilder was a champion. So, yeah, it's easy to criticise him now, but his resume speaks for itself. James Francis says, them heavy blows to the brain are no good. Can't disagree with that. Where are we? Oh, yeah, so Mod 5 Vinny says, I was only gone for 10 seconds. Well, I saw a white light, Vinny. That's all I can tell you. So, yeah, please do vote in our poll if you haven't already. We've asked you, do you want, would you like to see Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury next? Yes, inject it into my veins. No, give it the lethal injection. Which is it to be? Please do get your vote in before the end of the show and we will read out the results towards the end of the episode. We're expecting Mr. Ayman Khan to join us in the next 5 to 10 minutes. He is, if you only just joined us, racing back from sit-down interview with Frank Warren in Hertfordshire to his home, not Frank Warren's home. That'd be a turn up. in Birmingham to join us here on this podcast. And I should note that the interview with Frank Warren was in his office in Hertfordshire. There is no way that Ayman Khan has entered Frank Warren's box at the Emirates Stadium before me. That would be a sackable offence, a treasonous, one of those offence. So we're not having that. And you note that as well, young Josh. No one gets in that box before me.
That's all right, mate. I will not be trying to get in there anytime soon then.
Good. You stick to the City ground. You're having a good season, in fairness. Right, so we talked about Joshua Fury, which may or may not happen in 2025. It's not the only fight we're talking about that could go ahead. An all-British super fight, if you like, but one that's been talked about not quite as long as Fury Joshua, but one that came a lot closer to actually happening than that. And that's Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn, which seems to be getting talked about more now than the negotiations that are going on, which is rather disappointing. But Conor Benn seems to have two clear choices ahead of him now, and it will either Eubank Jr., if they can come to some sort of agreement over the purse, or Mario Barrios for a world title at his natural weight of 147. What do you make of the current situation, Josh? I know you spoke to Harry Scarf recently, and he said the time is now if they're going to do that fight. British champion Harry Scarf.
I agree with Harry Scarf. I think everyone's getting a little bit bored now of the constant negotiations. Even myself, I'm getting a bit bored of it. I think we're getting to that point where we just need to make the fight. Enough's been said. The fight has been scheduled before. Why have we not even considered the fight yet? Why have they not even got any closer? I know there's all this talk of the split, but just put some sensible heads in these negotiations and get the fight done, because it's getting boring now just hearing, I want this split, I want that split. If anything, I'd probably see a bit more interest if they just move on to their world title fights now. I'm starting to get to that point because I'm struggling to see it happen, to be honest. I just think with how the negotiations have gone so far since Conor Benn's been cleared, I don't feel like we're making any progress. Okay, we now know what the purse split is, but if they can't even agree on a 50-50, then what are they going to agree on? Do you know what I mean? So I think make the fight now or move on, go down these separate routes that both Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom have mentioned and taking them for world title fights. I've heard Ben Shalom saying other interviews with other outlets that they have a date ready for Eubank Jr., but they just want to see if they can make this Conor Benn fight one last time, and then if not, I'm presuming they'll be going on their separate path, as will Eddie Hearn and Matchroom.
Zumbanu Love says, going back to the initial topic, Tyson Fury should have lost versus John McDermott, Wilder 1, Otto Wallin, and Francis Ngannou. I mean, I'll give you 2 out of 4, maybe. Like, the consensus is that he should have lost the decision against McDermott in their first fight, though he did stop him in the rematch. And Ngannou, highly contentious decision. Wilder 1, I thought Fury was unlucky not to win that. And Otto Wallin, he definitely won that fight. So, yeah, maybe a bit of Fury hate coming through there, Zumbanu Love. DB Cooper 1 says, what did you get for Christmas, Mr. Flexen? That new Grandad jumper? Excuse me, I bought this for myself, you cheeky sod. And a Zimmer frame. I still get around all right for someone who's, you know, of a certain age and a bit of a fatty. I don't do too bad. I'm agile. Post your shots, DB Cooper 1. Come on, we need to see what you look like. Stuart says, AJ and Lewis are still the only UK heavyweights to unify any titles. That puts them above the rest. James Francis, I've been in a lot of fights and my head don't feel right. Stuart, the fight is a poor imitation of what it was, but I'd still watch. I think that's the attitude of a lot of people about this fight. And looking at the poll at the moment, it seems like, yes, inject it into my veins has taken quite a big lead. Josh's number 1 fans here. Cara Connolly. Joshy, you told me you weren't on. Josh, have you been lying to your number 1 devotee?
At this current time, I choose not to comment on these matters. I just think it's not the right place to be commenting on things that aren't relevant within the boxing world right now, and this is not relevant within the boxing world.
Were you even alive when it happened?
No.
Exactly. There you go.
Definitely weren't born, mate.
Nah, definitely weren't born. DB Cooper 1 says, Eubank versus Benn is nowhere near as big as Hearn claims it is. Eubank has more options, big money fights. He should move on. 55-45 is disrespect. What are Eubank's other big money options, DB Cooper 1? Let me know. Because the fights I see floating around, Erislandy Lara, Hamza Shiraz, you know, they're not bigger money fights than a Conor Benn fight, given the history of the dads and stuff. So what are all these big money options Chris Eubank Jr. has got. MB says, I want Ben versus Barrios personally. It's a good fight. I agree. I'd like to see that at 147. I don't want there to be any excuses with Ben and Eubank. Like, if Ben wins, fair enough, but they'll say that Eubank was dragged down to a weight that he couldn't make safely anymore. And if Eubank wins, they'll say Ben was too small. In that sense, it's a pointless fight. Zambanu Love says, the amount of interviews Eddie and Frank Smith bashing Eubank for not taking the fight shows how much more Ben needs this than Eubank. I mean, it's a huge fight for Ben, isn't it? It's like biggest money fight out there for him. My bone of contention is that it's also the biggest money fight out there for Eubank. So I'm not sure anyone needs the other more. You know, Ben's got more years left in his career than Eubank, so you could argue that he's got more time to make that big money anyway. Magic71 says, I would disagree that Wilder was quality. Boxing ability, terrible. Knockout, yes. Dylan Tring says, Joshua Thomas Hart. How dare you not tell me you was live? Wow. And then Cara Conley says, honestly, he kept this one so quiet. I think you guys need some counselling. Big Chungus says, Josh's mum. Cara Conley says, Big Chungus. Woo! There you go. Palmer off. Palmer off on Big Chungus. He loves everyone.
Have they committed any serious crimes where we can strike the banhammer on them yet? Or we're not allowed to dish out the banhammer yet?
Mate, if you want to do the banhammer without my endorsement, and I'll turn the other way for a second, I'm not saying anything.
Got my hand on right now.
Big news for Big Chungus. Ayman Khan is about 5 minutes away. About 5 minutes away. Hang on, folks. If you're here to see Mr. Ayman Khan, he will be, we promise. Where are we? Magic71 says, Eubank needs the fight with Ben. Frank's about to take his last purse, his sword, and the T-tail. This is, of course, Frank Warren apparently now suing Chris Eubank Jr. over their press conference fracas not that long ago. Yes, fracas. And Ayman will have asked him about that. Frank Warren, that is, this morning. So we'll find out a bit more about that, either when Ayman's here or when the interview goes out tomorrow. Big Chungus has said to Cara Conley, I'll message you personally whenever Josh Hart is on, so you never miss it.
Whoa.
You need that banhammer soon, didn't you?
Oh, I thought Big Chungus was one. I thought he was one of the boys. What's he doing? What's he playing at?
Ethan says, I need catching up on the seconds out Cara Con rally law. Yeah, it's quite. We've got to decide which bits are canon and which bits aren't. And I haven't been here for all of it myself. I'm sure Josh will catch you up in due course, but he's still suffering a bit of PTSD, I think. DB Cooper 1 says, Eubank literally turned down £5 million for Shiraz on Riyadh season and bigger payday with Canelo. Come on, he has more options than Ben, who has never made £1 million. But how much is he being offered for Ben? I can't imagine it'd be that much different, would it? Especially if it is a Riyadh season show. Stuart says, what about journeyman Jack Carroll? Has he got anything lined up? It's a bit harsh, Stuart. I mean, he's just coming off a good win over Regis Prograis. Beat Josh Taylor before that. Pretty good form for a so-called journeyman. Big Chungus says, don't ban me. I need my Khan fix. Yeah, I mean, he was 5 minutes away 3 minutes ago. So you just got to hang on. Don't do anything ban-worthy for the next couple of minutes. Stuart also says, Catterall should have rematched Taylor. It's 1-1. Yeah, but for a lot of people, it's not, is it? You know, in the general consensus, the public size, it's probably 2-0, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any real value for Catterall in doing that. And he wants a world title now. Let him have this number one eliminator fight with Barboza, and we'll see how he gets on. Dylan Tring is back again. I'm sure that's music to Josh's ears. He says, can you please ask Josh about orange chocolate VKs, Danny? Well, I mean, I don't think you should assume, Dylan Tring, that I have no knowledge of orange chocolate VKs, to be fair. You know, I've lived. I might be getting my Zimmer frame and my granddad jumper these days, but it wasn't always the case. But in the sake of fairness, Josh, what can you tell me about orange chocolate VKs?
I don't remember this popping up on the boxing schedule, to be honest, or on the debrief for today's live, Danny. So I don't
Do you remember anything about it? Is the question.
This is not great. They're a nice drink, apparently, from what I've been told. I've never tried one personally. I don't really dibble dabble in those weird flavors. I'm not a chocolate orange fan, so would love to tell you, but unfortunately, I cannot.
More on this story later. Hakan Johansson says Lewis Crocker versus Paddy Donovan in Belfast on March the 1st. It's my favourite fight announced, and I'll be in Belfast for that fight. It's the best fight of the early slate of fights that Matchroom have announced, in my view. Yeah, really looking forward to it. Unbeaten welterweights against each other, both Irish, in Belfast. Perfect place for it. Yeah, great fight. MB says Carroll is fighting Arnold Barboza for the world title in February. Isn't it a world title eliminator? I didn't think it was for a vacant world title.
I think if Teofimo Lopez vacates, then I think they'll get to do it for the full world title. But if he doesn't vacate, then it'll stay for the interim, or it would stay as the final eliminator.
Thanks, Josh. And on the subject of Josh, Cara Connolly says, me and Josh are in a happy relationship. With each other? Or are you happily apart? I think Josh is happily apart. I'm not sure. She says,
very happily apart, Danny. You could not have said that any better.
She says, right, don't ban me again, Josh, please. Big Chunga says, this is the best chat Big Chunga's ever done. We all know Josh is a big chocolate orange dabbler.
I retire.
Euphemistically speaking. Dylan Tring says, I have video proof of him drinking them. Wow.
That's bizarre. I don't know this man.
It's all coming out now. You don't know
I don't know this man.
You've disowned Dylan Tring live.
I don't know him. Genuinely, I don't know who he is.
Is that his actual surname, or is he from Tring? Is it Dylan from Tring? We need to know. I
could not tell you. I'll try to do some research on him, but I've got just as much knowledge of Dylan Tring as I do Cara Connolly. I don't know either of them.
So you're in a relationship with both? Is that what you're telling us?
No, I just don't know them.
Ladies and gentlemen.
They're obsessed.
Everyone loves a throuple these days. I blame David Hay, I've got to be honest. But getting back to boxing, which I'm sure Josh will appreciate. Conor Benn, Eubank Jr., we could go into like who needs each other more, who's it a career highest purse for, and all of that. I guess a better question is, do you still, and the same as AJ Fury, as we've asked already in the poll, do you still have an appetite for that fight? Is it a fight that excites you? And particularly, I want to ask this to people, and I'll ask Josh in a minute for that reason, and also because he's here. Is it a fight that excites the younger generation? Because for people of my sort of vintage, I can understand the feud between the fathers that we've seen unfold over the decades, and why that would feed into this, thing with the sons, especially if the dads get involved and they're in the corners and so on. But for the younger generation who only know them as the fighters, not as the sons, is there a real attraction to the fight? Josh, what about you?
I'd say yeah, there is. If you know your boxing despite being younger, and in my case not being born when the fathers fought, then if you do your research, then yeah, you'll still find the interest for it, but the interest might not be as big as what the older generation might have. But the older generation, again, they might lack the interest. I think the reason why it's harder to find interest in this one is, one, because of what's gone on in the last 2 years, but two, that they aren't the same weight class. And we saw how rough it was for Eubank Jr. to get down to that 158 catch weight they tried to make. We can see how much tighter it is for him to get down to 160. Is there any point in making this fight? Because we're going to get to a stage where we're going to be dragging Conor Benn up to what? 160 is already quite the stretch, especially as a 147-pound fighter right now. But if Eubank does plan on moving up, is there any point in even making that fight? And is there any interest in it anymore anyway? I think the younger generation probably don't have as much interest in it. I probably don't think there is. I'd probably say there's more interest from the older guys. The more your era, Danny, than my era. My era's not probably got as much. We're probably more excited about seeing Logan Paul versus Conor McGregor, but that's not on today's agenda. So we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excited about seeing Logan Paul against Conor McGregor, predominantly because I'm a big WWE fan, and I really like the work Logan's doing in that arena. And he'll probably take a lot of time off from WWE with the money they're talking about for the fight with Conor McGregor. He won't want to risk getting injured. So that's a bit of a blow after WWE migrating to Netflix, which was actually a big high for wrestling fans. So I'm going to have to nip off for my usual, dropping my son off at karate. It's not karate. Kickboxing. He won't thank me for getting that wrong. So, Josh, you're going to have to hold the fort for about 5 minutes until Ayman Khan turns up. He says, I'm racing back ASAP, although he sent me a picture of him stuck in traffic, so I'm not sure what to believe anymore from Mr. Ayman Khan. Funnily enough, he's stuck behind a car, and the last three letters on the number plate are PBF. So pro boxing fans are clearly running interference and stopping Ayman from getting back in time because they're threatened by us, which I think is disgusting behaviour. I wish all these YouTube channels could just get along. But that aside, Josh, let's move on. Let's change topic before I go, so it'll give you something new to talk about with the chat. And that's Terence Crawford. It's been talked about for a while now, the possibility of daring to be great and moving all the way up to super middleweight to challenge the undisputed champion, Canelo, which, if he was successful in that fight, if it happens, would make him a 3-weight undisputed world champion in the 4-belt era, which would be hugely impressive. And a lot of people saying, Canelo, very good boxer in his own right, but just too big, too strong, to quote Cole Froch, or paraphrase Cole Froch, for Crawford. But then there were some notable comments from, I think it was Tim Bradley earlier this week, where he backed Crawford to get the job done against Canelo and caused a lot of back and forth online about it. So what's your view on the fight, the likelihood of it happening, and Tim Bradley's comments?
I don't really think I want to see the fight happen personally. I think we need to see a bit more of Terence Crawford at 154. I'd probably still say Canelo gets the job done. Again, I think Canelo's too big, too strong. Has looked a lot better in recent time, especially in his last fight against Edgar Berlanga. I thought that was probably his most exciting fight in a while. But regardless, he still looked just as entertaining in these fights and looked just as dominant in these fights. Whereas we saw Crawford in a little bit of a tougher fight last time out against Israel Madrimov. It definitely wasn't the fight he was expecting, especially coming off that fight with Errol Spence Jr. the year before. While that year off may have not done him any good, a lot of people were buying that hype going into that fight with Israel Madrimov that we were going to see a dominant job from Terence Crawford. And all the talk of that fight week, the Riyadh Season LA fight week, was all about Terence Crawford facing Canelo next, going on to a massive, massive Riyadh Season fight. And then we see the fight with Crawford and Madrimov, and it's a lot closer fight than what everyone expected. And then that's where we've found ourselves now, where the hype went from right at the very top, one of the most spoke about fights. Remember, all doing all the interviews that week, and we were all just talking about Canelo versus Crawford and not really giving Israel Madrimov any of the credit. After that fight, now the hype has gone a little bit for that fight. I don't really agree with Tim Bradley's comments at all. I've not seen them myself yet, so I don't necessarily agree. I do think Canelo gets the job done. I think Canelo is simply too big for him. Maybe not height wise, but I think mass wise. Yeah, I do think Canelo just will be able to hold his ground and get it all done. I'm gonna have to take the brave step of turning to the chat now. I don't know if I really want to do this, so let me just slide up a little bit. We'll go with Hakan. I'd rather see Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. after one of them or both have won a world title. I agree with that point. I think that is what will give it more hype and more fun. I think right now there's just nothing there that makes the fight fully exciting other than the names. I think away from the names, it's not really that good of a fight right now. Nat says the only reason I want the fight to go ahead is to hopefully stop Conor Benn going live poolside wearing a shirt with too many buttons undone. Each to their own, fair enough. I've not really got much to say to that. I'm going to skip over these comments here, not talking about boxing. Platonic says Tyson is still the king. Fair enough. Poor Errol Spence is now a Fyro crash dummy. Yeah. I think that's a bit of a harsh comment, to be honest. He still went on to have some good performances after that. So yeah, I think that's I think that's a very nice comment, to be honest. Hakan, Canelo is unified champion. IBF is William Skull, so Crawford can't be undisputed in the third weight if they fight next. Yeah, but I think what people have been debating and talking about is, does Canelo go for the fight with William Skull next, or does he leave it, wait, and then see what happens with Canelo versus William Skull? I think that's an interesting one to see. Will Terence Crawford leave it or just go on with it? DB Coupon, poor Hakan having to be in a chat with us degenerate Brits. I apologise, my Nordic king. We're not all degenerates here, DB Cooper 1. So yeah, I think that's horrible of you to say to us. I think you're just labeling all of us. Stuart replies to Jay Sharp, yeah, I think that car crash finished him. Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, it definitely had some sort of effect. He wasn't the same fighter coming back from that car crash. I'll agree with that point. It was very, very sad to see that such a great fighter had that happen to him. Okay, right. Next chat. Dylan Tring says, "Now it's only Josh. He's ignoring all of his chat." Yeah, I'm trying to go to the people who are talking about boxing. To be honest, mate. Again, I don't really know who you are. Don't know why you come and pester me all the time on here. It's concerning. Might have to get a restraining order. Back to the boxing. DB Cooper 1. Agree. Canelo versus Crawford oddly sells well, but Crawford said it himself a while back. The fight makes 0 sense weight-wise. Then came the excellent Turkey. Bosh, I'll take the fight though. I do agree with you. DB Cooper. I do think that it's definitely a fight that we need to look at and it needs to be made. Especially when we look at the current landscape of boxing, because who is there really left for Canelo to fight? I think that's the big question we've got to be asking ourselves. Who's left for Canelo? There's still some good fights for Crawford. There's more on Canelo's end. And if we're looking at the list of who would make a great fight for Canelo, you probably got to say that Crawford's very, very high up there. Right, well, there's no more boxing talks. I'm going to have to just go straight in on the deep end now. Ethan says, Josh Hart versus Vodka Coke 4 scheduled for March. What are your thoughts and plans in the build-up to this fight? Good fight, great fight. Might watch, might not. Big Chunga says, all right, enough of this, Josh. Can we just get down to brass tracks here? Are you a chocolate orange tabler? No, not really. DB Cooper, my best guess, Cara and Ethan are twinks. Those lot are obsessed. Those lot are obsessed with good-looking young lads. I've been there myself. Thoughts and prayers, Josh. DB Cooper 1, thank you very much, my friend, for the thoughts and prayers. They are greatly, greatly appreciated. Dylan Tring, it says, all right, bye, Joshua. I've got to start work now. Have fun with whatever you do for work, mate. Yeah, have a good one. Hakan. Josh, will you be in Manchester for Chisora versus Welling on Feb 8th? I'm debating it. I am debating it. It's my birthday around then, so I'm looking at going up to Manchester for it. And he's back. Danny, how you come and save me in my time of need?
Say my name and he appears. Yeah, who was asking if you're going to be in Manchester? It wasn't Cara, was it?
No, it was Hakan. It was Hakan asking if I'm going to be going to Chisora versus Welling.
You can trust Hakan.
I trust Hakan. I don't trust Cara.
Cara's holding him hostage. You've got a gun to his head and making him ask what she wants. Cara Connolly, this is so outrageous. I'm literally in his room right now.
I will give you a room tour and prove it.
You might want to call the police.
I promise you now. I've got a small bedroom. I don't know where she's hid herself in here.
I'm not allowed to come into camera. I mean, I'm not going to say what I was going to say there. Dylan Tring, I won't pour you a Guinness again if you keep denying you know me. Oh, now it's got serious.
Well,
Ethan,
going off that logic, that I'd presume you like work at a bar or a pub then. So
yeah, I mean, there's no flies on you, Josh. Ethan says, Josh Hart, your backpack is under my ironing board whenever you decide to come and pick it up, friend. I mean, if that's code, that's very intricate.
No, I do know Ethan. Ethan's a good friend of mine. I left my bag at his.
You're willing to admit to Ethan?
No, genuinely, no. Ethan's a good friend. Ethan's a good friend. I'm going to pop round probably Wednesday on my day off to go grab it.
Wow, a few people in the chat now accusing you of keeping Cara hostage to work on your weed farm. Does she tend the crops, Josh? Says Zambanu Love. It's turned into an episode of Top Boy, and not a particularly good one, I've got to say. So let's try and bring it back to the boxing. You were talking about Canelo against Crawford. What were your just bullet point it for me, Josh? What were your summing up? What was your summing up?
My sum up of it was, I think for Canelo, it's definitely up there as one of the bigger fights for him. For Crawford, I think there's other options that, okay, might not generate the same interest, but would still be great fights that the boxing fans would love to see. But for Canelo, who is really left at super middleweight for him to fight? So that was the general consensus. And we came to the agreement that we'd all like to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd quite like to see Canelo move up and fight the winner of the Beterbiev-Bivol rematch, but he's shown no inclination to rematch Bivol in the several years since he lost to him, and even less desire to fight Beterbiev. And I can't say I blame him. I've got zero desire. I've got like negative, whatever the opposite of desire is. I'm loath to fight either of those guys, but then I'm not Canelo. He's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, isn't he? So, get on with it. But yeah, I don't really want to see him fight Crawford, and I don't give Crawford much of a chance in the fight. But How can I say I know better than Tim Bradley, who was a unified world champion? I can't believe we've made it to 5 o'clock and there's still no sign of Ayman Khan. Unless we really can blame pro boxing fans for blocking him in, I think this is awful, awful. He's had the highest of highs in interviewing Frank Warren in person at the office, which is usually reserved for true greats of this game like me. And now he's gone to the lowest of lows, from Zenith to Nadir, by not turning up to the live. I can't believe this. Stuart says Crawford is getting old, not showing yet, but it can't be far off. Big Chunga says, what time is Josh popping around to Ethan's on Wednesday? I'll lose sleep if I don't know. DB Cooper 1 says, Canelo is using and abusing a rabid, casual Mexican fan base and national holidays. I mean, this is like Ayman Khan style treachery, this. Even boxing hardcores have turned on him. So boring. Wow. Yeah, I mean, Canelo does seem to be taking the piss. Yeah, he does seem to be taking the piss at this point, Canelo. But has he earned the right to do so, I guess is the question. With the strength of his resume, how many good people he has beaten, how many titles he's won, started off at the age of 15 and just dominated for such a long time. Can we forgive him taking this attitude towards the latter stage of his career? Ethan says anytime between 6 and 7. So Big Chungus will be able to sleep now. Hakan says Devin Haney to be fighting BLK Prime in March. That is certainly the rumor. Yes, we'll have to wait and see. DB Cooper 1 says, I told you Frank Warren fed Ayman Khan to the pigs. RIP, lad. That is, of course, a Bricktop / Snatch reference. We had a lot of those. So part of the Ayman Khan interview with Frank Warren is a fan Q&A. So Ayman went on the community page on the Seconds Out YouTube and said, what would you ask Frank Warren if you could? So that he'd have a bunch of fan questions to put to the Hall of Fame promoter. And you can probably imagine just how many Bricktop references there were, as in far too many, like one's too many. But there were, there's no creativity amongst the trolls. That's all I can tell you. But yeah, I don't believe he asked him. It would have been interesting if he said to him, are you aware of the film Snatch and that you are, referred to as Bricktop by some members of the boxing fandom? But I don't think he did. Zambani Love says, does Frank have all the cases he's won on his office wall? No, he doesn't. He has lots of fight posters, though, and a statue of Prince Nassim Hamed. Not life-size, I should point out. But yeah, no. Oh, he's here! The man, the myth, the legend. I can't believe it. He's managed to go around the pro boxing fans' sabotage, and he's here. Oh, my God. I'm in the presence of stardom. Mr. Ayman Khan, what kept you?
Oh, Danny, you know what? I was racing back home from London. I was listening to Seconds Out Live. I was listening to the banter about Josh Hart's treason and your little quip of how he wasn't born again. All the kind of little jokes that we've been tying through all the weeks here. And I was like, you know what? I've got to push on the gas within, of course, the legal limits a little bit more. And I've got to get here. I've got to race here and be here for Seconds Out Live. I could not miss it. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on again, and great to be back in this triple shared hot seat. Is there room for one more? Vinny, do you want to get in as well?
Yeah, Vinny loves it. Do you remember Vinny for ages told us that we couldn't hear him on the thing when you can? Do you remember that? So whoever's doing the production, right, if they want to, they can talk to you like, through the show or just before the show starts or whatever. And then Vinny always said he couldn't do it. Like there was no way of us actually being able to hear his voice while the live was on. And then Frank Trevitt filled in for 1 week, and he was like, "Yeah, guys, ready to go. How's it going to give us a little pep talk before we started?" And we were like, "Oh my God, Vinny's been duping us for this whole time. He's just obviously doesn't want the interaction." That was brilliant. Modfather Vinny, you exposed us. Now we've exposed you. How'd you like it? And obviously he's not going to say anything because that's his style. But yeah, so back to Ayman. Great to have you here. You interviewed Frank Warren face to face in his office for the first time. Rarefied air that not many people get to inhale. How did you find it? How was it? Are you down from that high yet?
Yeah, a little bit of a choppy internet, so hopefully you guys can hear me on the other end. A little bit of the internet gremlins conspiring against me here. But first of all, just to say thank you, Danny, for passing the baton and giving me the opportunity to interview
I can't believe his internet's going
Currently,
choppy at the point when he's praising me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear that I was getting some sort of compliment, but it cut most of it out. I'm devastated.
All right. Well, I've got the ability to rewind time like the Prince of
Go
Persia,
again.
Sands of Time. And I'll say it again. Yeah, I just say once again, thanks, Danny, for passing the baton here. Couldn't have done that interview without yourself and your help. So much appreciated for the opportunity. And looking forward to presenting that to the people listening on Seconds Out Live tomorrow and the wider Seconds Out audience. It was a real good experience, something I'd wanted to do for a long time, to just kind of pick Frank's brain. And of course, for those of you who are paying attention, and for those of you who are subscribed, hint, hint, DB Cooper 1, we put in the Seconds Out community tab to ask for your questions as to what you had asked to Frank Warren had you the opportunity. And we gave you that opportunity to ask Frank Warren a question. He did a Q&A session from the questions that were asked, that we'd handpicked out, of course, from the responses to that. So look out for those if you did contribute a question. And then spoke to Frank Warren afterwards for a good length of time. Can't quite put a figure on it, but I'm sure it was more than about 30 minutes to 45 minutes conversation there, covering a small recap of the previous year, his mission statement for 2025, how he's been able to capture a stronghold on boxing, including his tilt towards the heavyweight division and picking up heavyweight talent, the fallout from Fury and Usyk too, including the absence of John Fury and what that meant for him, the possibility of anti-Joshua and Tyson Fury locking horns finally, what the status of that fight would be. Is it a bit of a Kell Brook Amir Khan type situation? Is it not? The possibility as well that now Frank suggests that he felt uncomfortable if Tyson Fury and Daniel Dubois were ever to lock horns, but now that Tyson Fury isn't in contention for a belt and Daniel Dubois does hold the belt, is he still as uncomfortable to make that fight? That's in there too, as well as a conversation surrounding Chris Eubank Jr. and his decision to go the legal route and why he decided to go the legal route with Chris Eubank Jr. I look forward, of course, to the year in prospect and who he's named as his breakout star of the year coming in 2025. He did, of course, name more than one fighter, as you imagine Frank would do. What else did we discuss? There was so much. A real good bit in there too. It's been discussed a little bit beforehand by my great colleague here, Danny Flexen, but just going over, of course, Frank has been frustrated as to some of the reaction as to Fury and some of the comments being made about him. And I did take the opportunity to ask him if some of that was because of how he'd had experiences of some of his family members and just kind of dealing with that. And Frank gave a real good, honest account of that. So that was pretty much the interview in totality. If I'm missing, I'm sure there's a couple of little bits extra in there, but it was a real good conversation with Frank, and I'm looking forward to having that live out on Seconds Out very, very soon in the near future. So look out for it. I hope it's a good one because I certainly enjoyed it.
So we've got Hackhands Ringside Live. Ayman is back to exclamation marks. Ayman loves a double exclamation mark, actually, so that's very appropriate. Stuart says, Naz, probably the most skillful boxer of all time. If you want to read the best ever article about Naz, I've put a link in the chat. It says it's by Matt Christie. It's not, it's by me. I will be having words with the people at Boxing News, whoever's in charge there now, to get that changed. But yes, read that. It was from about 10 years ago, but he doesn't give many interviews or lengthy ones anyway. Ninja's Rose talking about AJ Fury says, I'd watch it, but I ain't bothered at all, to be honest. If it doesn't happen, I ain't going to lose any sleep. We all know Luke, meaning Fury, is going to be impossible to deal with in negotiations again. Stuart says, without John in his corner, Tyson lost a unanimous decision. Big John was right. I'm not sure. I mean, those two things separately are true, but I'm not sure there's any correlation. iGolf J Tweetler says it's a York Hall fight. Wow. I mean, no disrespect to York Hall, where Johnny Tapia once fought, of course. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still comfortably bigger than that. But yeah, so we've talked about 3 fights that may or may not happen in 2025. Let's talk about fights that are, barring any last-minute injuries, definitely going to happen over the first 2 months of this year, a lot of which will be covered by Messrs. Khan and Hart. Ayman, starting with you, up until the end of February, so you can't pick Lewis Crocker against Paddy Donovan, unfortunately. Which fight are you most looking forward to?
Oh, I'm gonna need a revise of the fights. Throw some fights at me, Danny. Off the top of my head, I can't quite think.
Well, you got the February 22nd bill, which is just top to bottom, amazing fights throughout. Chisora against Valin, that's at the start of February. You got the Nottingham show that Josh will be covering. I'm going to as a fan, which is topped by Dalton Smith, but has also got is that in Nottingham the Conor Walker fight against Harry Scarf?
Yeah, that's on.
I mean, that's a banging fight. I'd have to have a look on BoxRec. Ellie Scottney against Miyamoto. That'll be a good fight as well on the Nottingham show. Action packed, I would imagine. But there's loads coming up. But yeah, I mean, I guess the best place to start would be the February 22nd show, which, as I say, top to bottom, great card.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a boxing fan, you'd be hard pressed to kind of look anywhere other than February 2022. Look, you've been in the boxing game a lot longer than I have, but I keep hearing the kind of thread coming through that this is one of the best boxing cards of all of kind of. Oh, sorry, I thought I put myself on mute there. One of the best boxing cards for a number of years, including some of Don King's offerings back in what was it, the 80s and 90s, that sort of period. So, of course, like Josh Hart, I wasn't born back then, so I can't really give too much of a comment and living through that one. But this one seems to, I think, when you're in competition with yourself as to which card is better than the last, and you keep outdoing yourself, you sort of leave yourself with no room to go, but it also proves that what you're doing is creating the fights that people want to see, or fight cards that people want to see. Too often you hear about stacked cards, and not everything is a stacked card, but this is truly warranting of that phrase. It is a proper stacked card from top to bottom. I'm quite intrigued by Chisora and Wallin, because more of the thread of, I don't know how the fight might mesh out, but Chisora has earned another fight, and you've got to be real as to the most recent timeline of Chisora and his career. And it's been like, how long can Chisora go on to? Or is this a bit uncomfortable viewing? Do we want to see Chisora back in the ring? And then he's earned another fight against Joe Joyce in 10 rounds. And at the end of it, he was trying to keep Joyce off of him, but he maneuvered his way through to the final bell and earned that win and earned that extra fight. So can he do it again? We're hearing that this is his final fight in the UK. Is it a losing effort? Is there another fight after that? What is his final fight? Does it get announced as well after whatever happens against that fight with Wallin? I think there's a lot of intrigue in terms of that fight for me in Chisora's career. Azim as well too, coming up as well versus Lipinets. Look, Azim is on the rise towards the top, and you never know truly with prospects, and he's bust out that prospect kind of moniker and into contender here now. And Lipinets has still got a lot of life in him. Not saying that the people that Azim has faced have been they have been at the end of their career, but not been like kind of knockover jobs in any sort of sense. But Lipinets is proven to be a tough competitor, capable competitor, and someone who can cause him some problems. A lot of people want to see the chin check test from a lot of prospects or contenders, whatever. We never truly sort of seen that yet. I know that Fanyan had caused, or at least got through with a couple of shots. He passed that at that point, but this is another level. And if Azim wants to get to world title contention by the end of the year, then he's got to come through Lipinets and look good in coming through Lipinets as well. So yeah, that about does it for myself in terms of what I'm thinking. Of course, like, I mean, Dubois Parker, unreal fight, Batelbia versus Bivol 2. That's gonna be another, like, I don't think that's a knockout fight either way. It's another razor close decision between the both of them. We'll see if Bivol can kind of close out the championship rounds where he just let it slip away from him and thought maybe he could coast to victory and banked a few more points this time around. Does he step on the gas a little bit more, or does he go a bit early to make the early rounds a bit more conclusive? Like, that's a real hardcore boxing fans, fighters fight, boxing fans fight. So looking forward top to bottom from that card and some of the offerings as well this year.
Stuart says Chisora versus Valin should be good. It's make or break for Valin. DB Cooper 1 can't wait for the February 22nd card. I'll be watching the Batelbia Bivol fight solely through Bivol's ex-wife's live stream. Pure drama, love it. So hate watching, in other words. DB Cooper 1 also says big step up for Azim. I think he could get found out here, not going to lie. Lipinets is no joke. If Azim wins, kid's serious. No, I completely disagree. I've got to be honest. Like, Lipinets is no joke. I don't disagree with that part, but style-wise, he's made for Azim. And I think Azim will look great and make a real statement. But yeah, big fight this weekend, or exciting fight this weekend, certainly with Callum Simpson against Steve Woodall as well, which has kind of gone under the radar a little bit because it's not the official main event in Sheffield. But, you know, Callum Simpson making the first defense of that British title against Steve Woodall, who upset the odds by knocking out Lerone Richards last time out as well. I think that'll be a real action-packed fight. I think Woodall really fancies it. I expect Simpson to be a little bit too good on the night. But I think it'll be all go all the way through. Josh, what about you? Because you're covering obviously some of these shows, but putting that aside, which fights are you most looking forward to over the next couple of months?
Well, there's one coming up on Wednesday afternoon, or about Wednesday lunchtime. You've got Jai Opetaia versus David Nika, which I think is a great fight. I'm really excited for that. I think it's a better fight than the original fight set for Jai Opetaia. So that is one that's definitely got my interest.
That's Wednesday, isn't it?
Yeah, Wednesday morning.
Wow.
I think it's about an 8 a.m. start if anyone's going to be up that early on the day.
Oh, what, in the UK? Is it that early? Wow.
Yeah, card starts about 8 a.m. Main event will be about lunchtime. I think it's like a 12 or 13 fight card.
Perfect.
So plenty to watch there. I'm not to be biased, but I am very excited for the Nottingham show. And I'm not saying that just like there's no fighters from Nottingham on there. One, I'm just very happy to have boxing back in the local city. But two, I do think they have actually treated us to some really good fights on there. I think Ellie Scottney versus Miyamoto is a serious fight. I remember watching Miyamoto's last fight, and you can see she's very, very game and will be a very, very hard fight for Ellie Scottney. Obviously, you have to make Ellie Scottney the favourite for that, but it's still, again, a great fight.
I have to. She'll kill me otherwise.
Harry Scarf versus Conor Walker as well. Obviously, I've spoke to Harry Scarf very recently. I'm going to try and reach out to Conor Walker and get him on soon as well and get his side of things ahead of this fight. And what, in a way, for Conor Walker, probably is one of the biggest fights of his career. It's up to the 12-rounder. It's for the British title, and a lot of fighters dream of winning the British title. So it's a very, very big fight for both Conor Walker and for Harry Scarf, who's saying this is probably the closest fight he's had to Derby in about, I want to say in about 8 years, I want to say. Wow. Or the closest fight he's had to Derby in a very long time. So he's expecting a big crowd. The main event, Dalton Smith, again, catching another belt. So again, a great card there. The night before Adam Azim, we've got a nice little next-gen card from Matchroom as well, which features Junaid Boston fighting against Bilal Fawaz for the English super welterweight title. I think next-gen cards are always pretty good, pretty entertaining shows.
Bilal Fawaz, that's the former Kelvin Fawaz, right? Who fought in the Olympics.
I could not tell you that one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it is. If so, that's a very good test for Boston.
But I think of everything coming up, it has to be the February 22nd card. I think that is the card everyone's looking forward to. I think every fight on there could be a main event. Best fight card I've seen in my lifetime. Obviously, it's probably not very hard to beat that, but still, some statement that 18 years on the planet and it's the best fight card I've ever seen. So, yeah, a lot to look forward to in this boxing schedule coming up. There's a hell of a lot of good fights. A much busier start to the year than what we see in other years, definitely.
Great stuff. Now, we asked you at the start of the show, Ayman, you wouldn't know because you weren't here. You were still racing through the traffic. Who do you want to see Joshua against Fury next? And the options were, yes, inject it into my veins, or no, give it the lethal injection. And there's still some life left in it, apparently. Modfather Vinny, if you want to close the poll and put the results out. But I did just get a sneak peek before that. And it looks like 63% still want to see the fight, I believe. Just wait for the, verified result from Vinny to come through. Oh, 62% in the time I was taking to intro the result of the poll. It's gone down by one. 62% say yes, inject Joshua versus Fury into my veins. 37% say no, give it the lethal injection. So it's pretty close. And I imagine if we'd have asked this question 2 years ago, it would have been a landslide in favor of yes. So fair enough. Inject it into all your veins. I mean, I will watch it, much like a lot of people have said in the chat. I'm not desperate to see it, but when it's on, I'm sure I'll get caught up in the hype and the what do they call it now if it's not on Sky? The face to face at the table and stuff. You can't call it the gloves are off if it's not the Sky version, can you? But whatever that's called, I'll be looking forward to that. Nat says she can't wait for Scotney in Nottingham. And DB Cooper 1 is asking about the toilets at Frank Warren's office, which is an interesting route to go down, but one we don't have time for on this week's episode. And Cara Francesca, a mysterious new addition to the chat, has joined us and seems rather interested in Josh. Maybe it's just everyone called Cara is only interested in Josh Hart. I'm sure it's not the same person under a burner account.
Sin Cara.
Sin Cara without face. Brilliant. Brilliant. Or is it Chris Jericho in a Sin Cara mask? we just don't know. But yeah, obscure WWE references aside, really thank you all for joining us and contributing to the chat. If you're watching on playback, please do comment and we will respond to some of those as well. Give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Josh, thank you for stepping in at relatively short notice as well. You've ended up staying until the end, so we appreciate that. As is usually the case, and he's made it in time for this part at least. Ayman Khan, please do give us your closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for joining on this week's edition of Seconds Out Live. I've only made a bit of a cameo appearance, so your adulation must go to Danny Flexen and Josh Hart for this week's contribution. And of course, send some adulation your own way, a clap on the back, as you might do to yourselves for contributing to another great edition of Seconds Out Live. We couldn't, of course, do that without you. Your contributions make the show as well, too, whether it be poll votes, likes, subscribes, or any questions that you have too. So that is greatly appreciated. We will be across all this week's boxing action, including the show up in Sheffield, including hopefully the Ring Magazine launch gala as well too this weekend.
Awards.
And any other? Say again, sorry.
Awards, Ring Magazine Awards.
They've had of course, my apologies. Ring Magazine Awards this weekend, and any of the latest boxing news updates. So do look out for that on Seconds Out Live. We will, of course, be bringing them you as soon as we can. And as I've mentioned before, the Q&A with Frank Warren and interview with Frank Warren covering a depth of topics. But for now, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys very soon in next week's edition of Seconds Out Live. Thank you, of course, to Vinny as well, too. Hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you had an even greater New Year. And you were spending the New Year as well, too, and throughout the year with Seconds Out. We'll see you very soon.